Dun, 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 dun.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Sunday night. And this is YouTube, and we are the Totally Football Show, about to make a Totally Football Show about the events of what I'm guessing is match day 8 of this Premier League season. Stay with us then. Enjoy our fumbling attempts to produce something vaguely coherent and concise. It will, of course, be packaged up if you fancy abandoning us at any point and returning to the podcast later on. It'll be a proper polished podcast thing, as per usual. Anyway, I'll just get started and stop yakking. You guys are good. Bit of an intro. Totally Football Show today. Liverpool claim first big scalp, although the manager had one already. A shock scoreline at Molineux sees City turn to stones again, while it's sour cherries for the Gunners. We round up the latest up and down the league, from the title race at one end to Saints and Wolves at the other. Plus, best record of any club in Europe. We get some Abba Yabba Do on Aberdeen in this Totally Football Show. Sunday, 20th of October, the Premier League is back from the international break, and back from whatever it was they were doing last weekend are Duncan Alexander. Hi, Duncan.
Hello.
Tim Spiers. Hi, Tim.
Hello.
All right. And Daniel Storey of The Eye. Daniel.
Hello, James.
Hello. Daniel, you just got back from the Scilly Isles.
Yes.
Yeah.
The UK's paradise.
All right. You posted some pictures on social media that look really, really nice. You took a break from doing the 92 last weekend and possibly did the 2, as it's known in the Scilly Isles.
I missed the Charity Shield, actually. The island we stay on, St Agnes, doesn't have a boat connection to St Mary's, where the game is played on the Sunday. So,
right.
But I did meet someone in the shop who said they'd scored and showed me the video of their goal on their phone for the Wolfpack Wanderers.
Wolfpack Wanderers
team.
They are one of the 2 teams in the Scilly Isles, the world's smallest football league. Is that right, Tim?
I can't imagine one smaller than 2.
Okay.
It's not a league, is it? That's not a league.
Yeah, no, it is. They play each other 18 times a season, I think, and then in both cup competitions as well.
That's just a record of how the games have gone. It's not a league. Oh,
It's like
what is a league, Duncan? What is a league, Duncan, other than a record of how the games have gone?
oh yeah, fair. You'd blow my mind. Wasn't when the Scilly Isles where Brian Clough was when he found out Derby had won the league title?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, because
Dragging us back to football. Good man.
Because in those days you didn't have all the games and the season ending at the same time. I think Derby played all their games and they needed results to go a certain way. I think some of the players had gone on holiday to Mallorca and Brian Clough had gone
that's
to
what I had in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, he'd gone to the Scilly Isles, so a bit of football heritage right there.
Magnificent. So you met a fellow who'd scored for the Wolfpack.
Wolfpack Wanderers, yeah.
Wolfpack Wanderers. What's the other team called?
Garrison Gunners, I believe.
Nice. All right. Excellent. Let's get on to what happened in the rather more ample dimensions of the Premier League this weekend. It was match day 8. It was a weekend of comebacks, which began Saturday lunchtime at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. West Ham took a 1-0 lead away to Spurs, but then got spanked 4-1. We'll get into how and why a little bit later on. Saturday afternoon then, Southampton went 2-0 up at home to Leicester. Didn't work out well for them, though. They ended up losing 3-2 to the Foxes. The Saints are now gone a club record 21 top-flight games without a win. At Fulham, Aston Villa also went behind. Raul Jimenez with his 10th goal in 12 Premier League starts. But it was Villa who came out of it 3-1 winners, whilst at Old Trafford, or indeed while at Old Trafford, Man United overcame Brentford's early goal, but not as early as they usually do, at the end of the first half, in fact, to win 2-1. Man United thus ending a 3-match run without a goal. Also Saturday, Everton beat Ipswich 2-0. That's the Toffees' first away win since last December. And at St James's, Brighton beat Newcastle 1-0 to go 5th. The evening game saw Arsenal travel to Bournemouth, pick up another red card, this one for William Saliba, and then go 2-0 down to the rampant Cherries. On Sunday, their rivals City went a goal down at Wolves, huffed and puffed, but eventually won 2-1 with pretty much the last kick of the game. And then Liverpool by the same scoreline at home to Chelsea to wrap up the weekend so far, although there is still Forest Palace on Monday night. We'll begin with events at Anfield. Liverpool 2, Chelsea 1, Sunday afternoon at Anfield. Joining us now on the line, James Spiers. James, the Arnie Slot machine rolls on.
It certainly does, yeah. They had to fight hard for that. I think it wasn't particularly fluent or particularly convincing, but yeah, the certainly the character and the fight and the grit that was on display kept Chelsea at bay after Curtis Jones restored their lead. And yeah, it was a strange game. I don't think neither team were really at their best. I think probably the kind of game we come to expect straight after an international break when neither managers had much time to work with them. But yeah, I thought over the course of it, Liverpool probably just about deserved it.
Chelsea weren't at their best, but a lot of that was to do with the way that Liverpool contained them.
Yeah, they really did. Yeah, I think it was. I mean, it was like a strange kind of game when you look at it. I mean, Chelsea had 57% possession, and very few teams come to Anfield and have anything like that. Yet, for all that possession, they only actually had 2 shots on target. And yeah, it did get a bit nervy late on, but I thought Liverpool defended magnificently, and that's one of the biggest changes under Slot in terms of just how much more compact they look when they're not in possession. What is that? Only 3 goals conceded now in 8 Premier League games, the best defensive record in the division. And of course, on a day when it's not really clicking in terms of fluency as an attacking force, being that resolute defensively is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely, a huge week as well for Liverpool. Arsenal coming up in the next round of Premier League matches, but before that, the trip to Germany to take on RB Leipzig.
Yeah, it's a huge week. I think, kind of this run of games up to the next international break. I think as well as Liverpool have done under Slot in the first few months of the season, even Slot himself has been continually banging the drum that, he knows that tougher tests are to come. And that's why today feels big, because not so much because of the performance that, as we said, was scrappy, but just the result. The fact that Chelsea had won all their previous away league games this season. It's their first kind of traditional top 6 scalp, I guess, for in terms of for Slot, in terms of teams that have come to Anfield. It's probably his biggest day at Anfield since he took over. And as you said, it's hopefully for Liverpool it sets the tone for what's to follow, because they have to keep on raising the bar with Leipzig and then Arsenal away next Sunday. I guess the one downside today was that sight of Diogo Jota limping off in the first half, because he's been so integral for them so far this season. Of course, a player who's had a fair few injury worries in his Liverpool career so far, so they'll be desperately hoping that that's nothing serious, because you certainly wouldn't want to be without him with some of the games they've got coming up.
James Spiers at Anfield. All right, Daniel, you were able to see this on your way back from Molineux? What did you make of it?
So much.
All right, well, in which case, I'll tell you what, if you saw most of it, Tim, you saw all of it because you were here in the office, weren't you? Tim, you were washing the bitter taste of Wolves 1, Man City 2 from your mouth with this late Sunday game. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it's sort of curious how this just isn't the Liverpool we're used to. It's going to take a bit of getting used to in terms of just how much sort of control and sort of calmness that they exude. It was quite a captivating game, but it wasn't sort of the most exciting. And Chelsea made a really good start to the second half, and then Liverpool just sort of took control and took this thing out of the game. I mean, yeah, Kelleher only had a couple of sort of shots to deal with, 2 shots on target, as James said. And it just sort of typifies, I guess, the change from Klopp to Slot. Last season, Liverpool were, and the data sort of backs this up, an emotional team, and coming from behind, and like 25 to 30 points they got from losing positions last season. And sometimes they sort of needed to go behind to feed off that emotion of the crowd and to win games. There's none of that at all this time around. And they've got this freakishly good, defensive record, which bodes really well, obviously, for their sort of title ambitions, which is what you have to say now.
Mm.
Yeah, I think the fact that the defence is still so strong. It had sort of echoes of a sort of game from the 2000s, I thought.
In what way, Duncan?
Well, obviously there were a lot of games between Liverpool and Chelsea in the 2000s. One every week, pretty much. But
the silly Isles.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, both teams were quite cautious. There was I think both got a bit of joy from longer passes. But as Tim says, Liverpool just kind of soaked it up. I mean, Chelsea started really well. I thought, Reece James came into the team, put in some lovely crosses. You slightly wince at, him running around, going, hope that hamstring's all right. But he looked as good as ever. Madueke started really well. Chelsea will argue they should have had a penalty before Liverpool got one.
Liverpool might argue that Chelsea were lucky to finish the game in 11 men because, last man controversy and that. Should we direct some praise towards Curtis Jones, who was the key man, really, for Slot's side, Daniel?
Yeah, he's a funny one, Jones, in that I think Liverpool match-going supporters really cherish what he does. I think online maybe there's a bit less of an appreciation for that. He's almost, because he's not a guaranteed starter, it's almost a disappointment when he comes in the team. But he seems to be one of those players who is not a passing metronome. He's not incredibly consistent. He's not entirely dependable throughout 90-minute performances, but he seems to get involved in moments that matter for Liverpool. And that can sometimes be enough in this team, as Tim says, that feels like under Arne Slot it's going to be a lot more about control. You sometimes need players to, provide lightning shots within that kind of calm. And yeah, he seems to do that. He always seems to be there when some things are happening in Liverpool's team, whether it's kind of throwing yourself into front of a shot of Cole Palmer's to probably stop Chelsea taking the lead, or getting into the penalty box in the other end to win the penalty and could have won another. So yeah, I was really impressed by him. He was in the England squad last week for the first time, had to leave due to a personal matter. I think he probably would have made his debut against Finland, but maybe next time.
Was that because his family thing? Yeah,
he's had a daughter. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
Which he made quite clear with his celebration for the goal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think interestingly in the summer he's one of the few Liverpool players who actually came out and kind of looked forward, I think, to a new era at the club, in the sense that he kind of explained what they were doing under Slot was different to Klopp. And a few people took that as a sort of criticism of the old regime. I don't think it was. I think he's just quite a tactically aware player and was kind of happy to explain the differences. But I do think, him and Gravenberch, you go back a year and say that would be Liverpool's midfield in a massive game, and I think a lot of Liverpool fans, both at the game and online, to Daniel's point, would have been concerned. But they looked, as good as I've seen.
His role was key. He won the penalty that saw Liverpool take the lead. Levi Colwell's a look of disbelief when the finger was pointed at the spot was something to behold, I think, really, that the emotion spreading slowly across his face.
I would say quite quickly.
Quite quickly.
Their eyes just sort of sprang extremely far apart, and hands to the head. But yeah, I mean, he basically just kicked Jones and didn't kick the ball. So it's quite an obvious. I thought it was quite an obvious decision.
Okay, and then he got the winner. That's his first goal since New Year's Day. And that was just 3 minutes after the Blues had equalised through Nicholas Jackson.
Yeah, well, in terms of the win goal, it was a fantastic run from deep, which just wasn't picked up whatsoever. They were keeping their eye on Núñez and trying to play him offside, the Chelsea back line. As Salah's cross comes in, and then Jones, you can see it on the replay, he just ghosts in from deep, completely unmarked. And it's a really cute finish, and you do wonder if Sanchez kind of had the first half in his mind, because he does hesitate to go towards him and just... Well, he basically stands still until the very, very last second.
The first half, when he had clattered into... Was it Jones? Or
into Jones,
Into Jones. And it looked like it was going to be a penalty, but then VAR intervened.
Yeah, because he got the slightest touch of the ball. It was deemed not a foul, which again is quite an interesting take. Because, does getting the ball mean it's not a foul?
What if the player then runs into you? Is that necessarily your responsibility while you are getting a touch on the ball?
It kind of happened in slow motion. You could see they were going to collide for quite a while, and then they did. But by virtue of just getting that slight nick on the ball, deems not a pen.
I mean, it wasn't a great afternoon for goalkeepers all round. I thought Kelleher looked a bit nervous, a bit, a few instances where he didn't come for balls. One towards the end, actually, which could have given Chelsea an equaliser. I mean, we mentioned...
You could say for the goal as well, I think.
Yeah.
If Alisson was in nets.
Yeah, Alisson obviously probably one of the best one-on-one keepers out there. I mean, Jones's finish, we talked about the 2000s, was slightly a bit like the Ghost goal.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, this one did definitely cross the line, but it had that sort of energy to it a little bit. So
the cop just sucked it in, as they say, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you say James's finish?
Jones's finish.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. James Pearce did a fine job at the game, but he wasn't...
James' finish, Anyway, so right, that's obviously good, right? What did you say? So, but this one obviously did cross the line. Excellent. What would be your verdicts on all of this then? What conclusions did you draw, Daniel, from this match?
Well, I think we said it a couple of weeks ago, but we are going to have to readjust to this Liverpool team. But I feel like each week, one or multiple of us say, well, the test is coming soon. The test is coming soon. We'll find out how good Liverpool really are next week and the week after and the week after that. And barring one blip in all competitions, they look like this control is the way forward. The players seem immediately on board with it. Ryan Gravenberch seems... I think those central midfielders seem a lot calmer now than they were last season because it's not quite as harem-scarum. They're not having to be in 2 or 3 places within the same minute. It's incredibly regimented and structured, and it looks good. And they have got a horrible run of fixtures coming up, but I don't think there's any reason why Liverpool would feel that they were second favourites in any of those games because the control is easier to control. It's easier to know what you're doing from each game to each game. It's easier to play midweek football if you're trying to control games and not spending energy dashing around and pressing quite as intensely. So I'm really impressed. I mean, I don't think I know they're top of the league now. I don't think they're title favourites by any means, but they're certainly months ahead of our intended schedule for Arne Slot's Liverpool.
And Chelsea, who now lie in 6th place, how concerned would you be for them on the basis of this performance?
No, I don't think so. When you look at Liverpool's team and its development, it would obviously be so much further ahead in Chelsea in terms of time terms than Maresca's having to, put together a best 11 from so many players. And I think he's probably just a case of tinkering with that for the next few weeks. He's got so many match winners to choose from.
Play them all, I say.
Well, yeah, but it's the epitome of embarrassment and riches, and a lot of them have shown really good form at different times of the season already. So trying to pick your best 11 for that. I mean, even just the subs today, bringing on Nkunku and Neto and Fernandes. João Felix didn't even come on.
There was a shot of João Felix on the bench. It's like, what's he? Oh yeah. He's also a Chelsea player. Fair play. But yeah, just on Liverpool. So Slot's won 10 of his first 11 games. The only manager in Premier League history to get there faster is Pep Guardiola, who won his first 10. Right. But I think there was a bit of caution there because obviously that was 2016-17. City did fade a bit there. They didn't win anything that season. So, we have seen good managers come in and start well and then... But the flip to that is that if they go and beat Arsenal next week, they'll be 7 points clear of them, which is a good start.
It is. And it's an understrength Arsenal after the events of Saturday evening down at the Vitality Stadium. We'll get on to that match in a second or two, but first, Tim, the earlier game on Sunday took place at Molineux. It was Wolves against Man City. The fixture that famously Wolves had won last season 2-1, and you took the lead this time around. Were you daring to hope, Tim?
No, I didn't want that at all. To be honest, it just prolongs the agony. But yeah, Wolves sort of almost played it perfectly. Very similar to how they did, last year against City, where it's have a couple of shots and sit back in your own box. And yeah, I thought they contained City really well, despite the fact they lost the game.
Right.
City were mostly reduced to long shots, and Haaland was very quiet, and they played it almost perfectly. Right. Until the 95th minute. And
what was it? The 18th corner of the game. Daniel, you were actually there at Molineux. Was there a sound like thousands of souls suddenly crying out in despair and then falling silent?
I think it's a sound or a collection of sounds that I've never heard, certainly never heard before the VAR era, but we were told that there might be 2 celebrations in the VAR era, which is team celebrates or fans celebrate, and then let's say it's ruled out and the other fans celebrate. Here we had the lesser spotted 3 celebrations where you had City celebrations, then Wolves going mad because they saw the referee kind of raising his arm to say it's offside. And then we got the next one with VAR and kind of leading this kind of gold and black fury in the stands. I mean, we should say it was all done absolutely correctly. I mean, the linesman flags because he sees Bernardo Silva ahead of the last outfield player. The referee, concurs with that because there is VAR now. He concurs with that. VAR then says, well, yeah, you probably want to have a look at the angle here. Looked at it and it's completely correct. I mean, But it's very clever of Bernardo Silva to deliberately otherise, to do his tomfoolery before he could be considered offside. But that's exactly what he did. You can't be offside from a corner, so until it hits John Stones' head, you can do what you want. And at that point, he's sneakily sort of right of shot, playing spot the Bernardo competition, and there's nothing Jose Sarr can do to stop the ball.
Right,
So,
he'd essentially been bothering Jose Sarr with the intention, perhaps, of diverting his attention from the incoming corner, which John Stones gets to. And it should say that prior to all of this, Wolves had taken the lead. It was the Norwegian that you weren't expecting on the score sheet in this particular fixture, Jorgen Strand Larsen, who opened the scoring 7 minutes in. There then followed a long period of City siege before City did one of their classic goals from range with the classic scorer of said goal, Josep Guardiola.
Yeah, there's been 28 long-range goals in the Premier League this season. City have 7 of them, which is precisely a quarter. So you get a lot of people saying Pep Guardiola's changed football and they only score from cutbacks or intricate passing. But actually, he's keeping the dream alive. He's keeping the screamer scene going. So yeah, fair play.
Very nice. Anyway, what minute was that when City equalised? Just before half-time? Is that right, Tim?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So you had the whole second half and about 7 minutes of time added on at the end there of basically Wolves hanging on.
Yeah, it wasn't a particularly sort of thrilling, Wolves holding on by the seat of their pants in the second half. I thought the way that City played the game lent itself quite well to the way that Wolves were defending. They were, like I said, reducing them to long shots, closing the spaces down, an organised defence. I mean, it sort of relies on 100% commitment and concentration, but that's exactly what they gave. Going direct to Haaland and hoping for a bit of a knockdown or a ricochet, just not an option for City, and I thought that did play into Wolves' hands, actually.
Well, you say the Norwegian you didn't expect to score, but I'm going to posit Haaland's actually on a goal drought now.
How many games?
A handful, but 66 players have scored in the Premier League since Haaland last year.
Really?
Which, for a man
Really?
of his stature, is quite a lot of players. So, and he was very quiet. And City had 22 shots, to Tim's point, and none of them were deemed big chances by Opta. So
wow.
It was that sort of game where it was going to be the sort of goal that did win it, that won it.
22 shots. They also had 539 passes completed in Wolves' half of the field, which is a record in a Premier League match, certainly this season. I think the third most they've ever had in an away game. Anyway, not an absolute record, but it's high. But anyway, it all eventually fell their way with that corner in the 95th minute. Who takes the corner?
Phil Foden.
Phil Foden takes the corner. John Stones rises magnificently. Jose Sarr can do nothing except flail vaguely as the ball flashes past him into the net. But then there is this VAR review, and a little bit of hope surges in Wolves' hearts because of the...
Which included Jack Grealish explaining to officials that Bernardo Silva is a very short man, which was a very nice, funny thing.
How did he do that?
He just kind of did that with his hand and pointed,
Right.
as you would. I think that is the universally accepted gesture for a small man.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned short man, because that's something that Gary O'Neill brought up after the game.
Right.
So yeah, he's obviously. I mean, I think he's become renowned for moaning quite vigorously against refereeing decisions going against Wolves.
You can understand his disappointment.
I think it's a legitimate goal, to be honest. I think,
right. No, but just to have held out, and it was
no, of course,
94 minutes and sorry, I said 7 minutes time added on before, but it was a 5, and this was the last 10 seconds or so of that.
Yeah, of course, but he's just this constant sort of moaning against refs, and it's subconscious bias. Is what he's come out and said, which is pretty strong.
So what did he say this time?
So yeah, he said it's subconscious, questions whether it's subconscious bias against a team like Wolves and for a team like Man City, which will, is FA charge type territory, I'd imagine. And then he said, very randomly, if I had to upset someone in a street, it was a daily occurrence for all of us, and there was a little guy and a big guy, I'd be upsetting the little guy. Again, I'm not sure the circumstances.
It's a very specific scenario.
It's very specific, and he does say, "I'm nothing against little guys."
I want to role play that scenario.
Well, I'm gonna come straight out and say no, Gary, no. As I understand it, not only are small guys the ones who have the shortest tempers. They're the guys with chips. They're the guys who
Joe Pesci.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But also in any given street scenario, brawl environment, you always want to take down the big guy first. That's my tip.
Right. A shame he went in the press conference.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, back to the football.
Yeah, so I just don't think it's a particularly good look for someone who's got a reputation for moaning about refs just to keep moaning about it when, to be honest, I think it was a pretty fair decision personally.
It's kind of instructive that on a day when VAR was 100% unequivocally right and did what it should, and that people still just spent the next 20 minutes going, oh, well, this is classic VAR. It's like, no, it's not. It actually worked.
VAR had a great weekend, actually.
Yeah.
There were a lot of quite bad decisions that were overturned by VAR this weekend.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Stockley Park. Well done, boys. Good process.
It is
All right.
like really interesting at Molineux to hear how early like the corruption chants start. I think it was like 15 or 16 minutes maybe that the first like Premier League corrupt as F chants start kind of echoing around Molineux. There is like, I mean, Gary O'Neill may be foolish in doing it, but it's fair to say, Tim, that he's kind of, he knows his people in that regard. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember going to Fulham away last year, and it was just a horrible experience. This is right in the middle of Wolves being hard done by VAR decisions, and it was just the whole discourse of the game was just dominated by that in the away end, just talking about decisions that have gone against them and moaning at the refs and checking their phones for replays of decisions that they thought were gone against them. It's just not football, Jimbo.
And let's not forget, Wolves did, bring it as a issue or to try and get VAR disbanded.
So true.
And got
Well,
voted
that's another thing
19-1.
with Gary O'Neill is that he's very much backed up by those above him in this sort of crusade, rightly or wrongly, against football decisions. But but overall, it was a good day for Gary O'Neill. I mean, before the winning goal, they were sort of singing his name in stoppage time, reverberating around Molineux. And it was important that Wolves are always likely to lose this game, but it was important to lose it in the right way.
In the right way.
With the run they've been on and a sort of a limp, dispiriting 4-0 defeat would have brought it into focus his position. But I think he's probably bought himself a little bit more time.
And statistically, Wolves have had the hardest start of any team, so it's going to ease off.
Keep saying,
It's going to ease
like
up. You've got
a-
Brighton away, home to Palace, home to Saints.
Oh, the November-December's a
A
dream.
double? Yeah. All right. Excellent. Arsenal, they might have fancied their chances Saturday afternoon when they travelled down to Bournemouth. Should we try and squeeze this one in before we take a break? We will, on account of them being... No? We'll do a dream. All right. Arsenal, Saturday afternoon. Late afternoon, we're away at Bournemouth. That didn't go so well for them. We'll find out how and why next. Bournemouth 2, Arsenal 0. Note from producer Charlie, can't be asked. Daft little ground, silly game, fuck off. Was there much to see here? There kind of was, wasn't there? We had, and Duncan, you're calling this a great weekend for VAR, contentious refereeing decision. Perhaps number one of the last couple of days was the William Saliba red, which certainly went to Stockley. He picked up, he was sent off after taking down, who did he take down?
Evan Nilsson.
There you go. Evan Nilsson reducing his side to 10 men for the third time in 8 games this season. Fair? Not fair?
Fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was a yellow card on the pitch.
Right.
And the Hounslow, the Middlesex video lads said no, it should be upgraded, and it duly was.
Right. Okay. And those who would point at the Tosin, the similar Tosin intervention in the Liverpool Chelsea game.
Well, Colville was much closer, and the ball was sort of that was more of a
Heading that
diagonal.
direction.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I mean,
all right. And it wasn't Arsenal as well. I think that's the key thing.
I mean the there's Arsenal fans would say Ben White was
Right.
is fast, but I don't think the laws of the game kind of allow people to take in varied speeds of players when you make that decision.
Vectors. I hear you. Okay, so that's the red card business dealt with. Very nice. And then what turned the game was a corner kick routine, and a lovely one, eh, Daniel?
Yeah, I thought Bournemouth. I know the red card and Arsenal's defeat was the kind of pervading headline of the game, but I thought Bournemouth were absolutely brilliant with 11 men against 10 and with 11 against 11. And Andoni Iraola's got them so well drilled to be able to press and kind of force turnovers high up the pitch. They've done that more than any other team in the Premier League this season. I interviewed Lewis Cook last week, and he was talking about like how him and Ryan Christie are both basically able to sort of act 10 yards higher up the pitch this season because they feel fitter under Iraola than they were a year ago when they took 3 points in their first 9 games. it all now clicks. They can get up and down the pitch. They're so high intent, so intense without the ball. I think the only thing they are missing at the moment is Evan Nielsen settling in and becoming their Dominic Solanke, because kind of Duncan will probably know, but the underlying numbers suggest they should be kind of way up the league at the moment. They just look brilliant, and they have this ability to pinpoint weaknesses in opponents and exploit them really quickly. Having a man sent off is a pretty obvious weakness, but the way that they stretched the game wide and kind of pulled Arsenal into different positions, and as you say, the set piece routine to find a free man in the box was just so well coached. They look.
Oh, did you? I thought you could say they looked something, but I don't.
Sorry.
No, they look. Did you want to say what they
so
look?
I'll just say, yeah, they just look so well coached.
Magnificent. Ryan Christie it was, and we talk about the looks on players' faces this weekend. None finer than the delight on Ryan's faces. He scored only his second ever Premier League goal by side footing, but I mean, that's not really the way to describe it, because he kind of curls it as well. It was a lovely finish anyway. Well done. And then the second goal was Evan Nielsen, was it not, who got the second goal for Bournemouth? No,
it was Justin Kluivert.
Justin Kluivert got the second. Who's sorry, and then it was Justin Kluivert who provided the assist on the free kick, who made it 2-0.
Yeah, and that came from a dreadful back pass from Kivior, and obviously the red card came from a bizarre back pass from Trossard from the opposition half. I mean, I think it was Danny Baker back in the 90s when the back pass rule first came in, who sort of said, "Oh, this means we'll never get any sort of comedy back passes anymore." And I think this game proved that no, you can very much get them with the back pass law. And Kivior then had the pretty quite the not great feeling of being a sub who is then subbed, which I don't think he will be spending many family holidays in Bournemouth in the future.
Well, that's a shame for him then.
Jurassic Coast, he is missing out.
Yeah, absolutely. Some lovely spots down there. Martinelli may not look back on his trip to the South Coast with too much affection after he spurned Arsenal's best chance of the game just before Bournemouth got their opener, and Bournemouth getting their first win over a team in the top half of the table since last December. So that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you say, that was at 0-0, wasn't it, the Martinelli chance? So
yeah.
Bournemouth are great, but Arsenal did blow this away with those horrendous back passes and missing that Giltes chance.
And getting a red card again.
Yeah, another red card. I think the stat flashed up that since, is it Boxing Day 2019, there's 18 red cards, 5 more than any other team. I was thinking before the game...
5 more than any other?
Yeah. There was a stat that flashed up on Twitter before the game that 9 of Arsenal's 11 were 6 foot and over, which sort of instantly reminds you of early 2000s Arsenal under Wenger, who also had a horrendous red card record, of course.
But an amazing record at winning with 10 men. Like it didn't really impact them at all. Whereas I think this season we've seen that this Arsenal are impacted by... I mean, the City one, fair enough, you're away at Manchester City, but they lost control of the Brighton game after that red card. And, I mean, even before the red card, they didn't look great in this game. It very much felt like a sort of post-international break. I didn't think Mourinho came in for his first start. I didn't think he looked great.
But there was no Saka.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think people wondered what they'd be like when Odegaard was injured, but I think they've coped, by and large, pretty well without him. But I mean, I think we saw how valuable Saka is to this team. I mean, I thought it was harsh to possibly take Sterling off, who has got a very good record against Bournemouth, instead of Trossard, perhaps. When they made the defensive switch after the red card, and given what Trossard then did, possibly, made sense.
All right, Saka's a big player. Odegaard's a big player. William Saliba's a big player. He'll certainly be missing next weekend when Arsenal host Liverpool at the Emirates in a potentially pretty big match in terms of their chances of staying in the title hunt.
Well, yeah, I mean, how many games can they afford to lose realistically? That's one down already, maybe 2 or 3 more. With the 90-point target now that you've got to aim for. I mean, the signs were there against Leicester and Southampton, 2 inferior teams to Bournemouth. And the red card thing is a massive issue because obviously those are the 3 red cards they've had is the 3 games that they haven't won this season. But it's not like in Wenger's day where it might be for a two-footed lunge, or trying to sort of gain control and gain an upper hand over the opposition. It's like they're not really gaining anything from these little kicks away for second bookings. And I know the Saliba one, you'd probably let even Nielsen through on goal with his recent record. So yeah, I don't know where this sort of comes from, and if it's a lack of discipline or a lack of control in games. But when you had Arteta saying earlier this year that when they lost 1-0 away at Porto, that the dark arts is something that they sort of need to improve upon, as it were, then you do wonder if they're just a bit of a team on the edge and it's costing them at the moment.
I agree with that, Tim. I did think it was good to hear Declan Rice come out after the game and say, we've shot ourselves in the foot 3 times and we've got to stop doing it. I did wonder after there was such hoo-ha after the other 2 red cards, and Arteta seemed to be sort of fairly obviously passing on the blame to officials and VAR, that it almost allowed Arsenal's players to say, well, everyone's against us, we've not done anything wrong. Whereas actually, both of those, whether you agree that they were red cards or not, were pretty dim decisions. And I think, as Tim says, I think Saliba's was as well. I think you let a player through on goal and back yourself to come back in the game if he scores in the first half. The fact that Rice is saying, that it's not good enough, we need to sort this, probably suggests that they will sort it. I do think for next weekend, with the way Liverpool play with that control, and Arsenal now I don't think can probably afford to lose that game, then and the players that will be missing, it does kind of make me worry that might be a bit of a kind of 0-0, 1-1. We're both happy to take a point and hope Manchester City don't keep staying unbeaten for another 31 games.
All right. We'll preview Arsenal-Liverpool, of course, in our Thursday show. Next up on this edition, let's get on to what took place not far away on Saturday at St Mary's as Southampton took on Leicester. Do you want a bit of comms here, Charlie? Bit of a late shout for comms, but I don't know. It was such a remarkable finish to the game, wasn't it? Totally Football Show Europe. Actually, let's not mention that. Whew! Which bit of comms do you think you put in? The last goal. Jordan Ayew. There you go, yeah. Jordan Ayew, 98th minute. Breaking hearts at St Mary's. Southampton, who are sharing Wolves' predicament of having just 1 point down at the bottom end of the table, had gone 2-0 up in this match and looked set to finally get the Russell Martin bandwagon rolling again. But instead, they shipped 3 goals and, well, yes. Well done, Leicester, first of all. Magnificent goal from Facundo Buonanotte, Fatawu getting loads of love. What do we think of Leicester?
Yeah, I mean... Sorry, go on, Daniel.
I've spoken of this a few times this season, but there seems to be a really odd kind of mood growing amongst Leicester supporters where they obviously didn't like the appointment of Steve Cooper. They obviously didn't want to lose Enzo Maresca. They were obviously disappointed not to appoint Graham Potter. And that seems to have led to this kind of weird psychological maelstrom where they hate the team selection, they hate the tactics, they've criticised the substitutions. And yes, falling 2-0 down away at Southampton is very much filed under not ideal, but they're doing really, really well. It took until just 22nd of December last season for a promoted club to reach 10 points. Leicester are already on 9. That's really good. They've scored more goals than Newcastle. They've scored more goals than Manchester United. They've scored more goals than 11 Premier League teams. So it's not as if they are defensive, it's not as if it's stopping them scoring goals. And they're now closer in points to the top 6 and the bottom 3. And yet everybody doesn't seem to be happy. I guess kind of maybe that can work, and Cooper can sort of use that as even our own fans are doubting us, so let's show them we're good enough to stay in this league. But it just strikes as a really bizarre mood at Leicester at the moment.
I mean, you said that they didn't want Maresca to go, but I think quite a lot of them did. They half the
maybe
last season,
true actually.
They were fed up with that. They were like, the football's too progressive. So I just think they don't like managers very much, apart from Ranieri.
Anyway, that's Leicester. I'm not sure how much Saints love managers these days, or that manager. They did have a tough start, but if you're losing games like this, or the match against Ipswich where they dropped points after that late goal, how much hope is there that they're going to turn things around, that the morale hasn't been irrevocably shattered and the relationship with the fans wrecked?
Yeah, morale's a good question, but in terms of how the team are playing, they're not being thrashed, because, they gave Arsenal a really good game. They gave Man United, played well against Newcastle. They were 2-0 up here, look at the positive, Saints fans. I don't know. They're obviously aiming for a really high tariff. It's like, in diving where you're going for the high tariff dive. And if you pull it off, you get quite a lot of points. But I guess they're sort of belly flopping a bit at the moment. But if it does click, then you can see them kind of rising the table quite quickly.
Can you?
Well,
I'm asking. Can you?
If it does click with the style of football they've got, and they did some decent recruitment in the summer, I thought.
There was a piece on The Athletic on Friday about how committed Russell Martin is to that way. But he's not going to change at all. He's going to keep going. And I think almost...
There was a manager like that last season that worked out well.
Well, he got a good job at Bayern Munich, so fair play. I think Southampton are better than Burnley.
Okay.
And, it's just... They're quite an unlucky team, I think, Southampton. It was the first time they'd been 2 goals ahead at half-time in a Premier League game since November 2020 against Manchester United. They also lost that 3-2. But we are living... I'm coming dangerously close to admitting that two goals is a dangerous lead. We're 13.5% of games this season. I've seen a team...
That is a...
Yeah, I've seen a team come from 2 down to draw or win, which is the highest rate ever in a Premier League season.
Really?
Yeah.
And what do you put that down to, Duncan?
Fair, chemtrails, I don't know.
I don't know. Daniel?
I did think it was interesting after the game. I agree that Southampton might be better than Burnley, but I don't think they'll turn it around. And I agree that Russell Martin won't change, and I think that will end up being a problem. He has in the last couple of weeks. I think it was after the Manchester United win in September. He was kind of after the game saying, we all need to stay together. The fans need to stick with us. We all need to be together forever, and that's how we'll improve. And after this game, he's kind of going, one person didn't do their job, and that's why we lost the game. So, and
Who was it? Who was it?
I actually don't know, and he didn't. I initially thought he meant Aaron Ramsdale not saving it, but actually what he meant is there should have been a player on the penalty spot to either make the block or go with the run.
He
but
didn't mean
name
himself.
who. No, I think it was very much a self-preservation exercise rather than an admission. I just think that's like you can only get away with doing that once or twice until the players say, "Well, hang on a minute, you're the manager here. You can't 1 week say we all need to be together and then say when it suits you, I'm literally singling out one player and also allowing supporters to kind of rumour who that player may be. And if you're going to do that, say." I've had a word with Taylor Harwood-Bellis in the changing room because I wasn't happy with him on the corner. And everyone goes, okay, fair enough. But if you've had a word with him, we get it. To just kind of do this sort of one player knows they've let everybody down is just, I just think it's a bit poor, really.
Not going to disagree with you. Saints have made it to a club record 21 top-flight games now without a win. But don't worry, because next up, they're away to Manchester City.
Stranger thing? Actually, no.
Right. There they are down the bottom end on 1 point. Also in the neighbourhood are Ipswich, just outside the bottom 3 on 4 points, having been beaten at home Saturday afternoon by Everton. That's Everton's first away win in 15 Premier League matches, a run dating back to last December. And indeed, Sean Dyche's side, after losing their first 4 games of the season, have now not lost any of their last 4. So quite the turnaround from the Toffees.
Yeah, I think their numbers weren't as bad as they looked with that bad start. And Julie, Ndiaye is playing really well, as Benji pointed out on Thursday. And Dwight McNeil as the 10 is a real success story this season. Obviously got another assist here. I do think it's worrying this game for Ipswich because, the Monday Night Football is Forest Palace. If Palace got something from that and climbed out of the bottom 3, then the 3 promoted teams would all be in a pretty tricky situation, other than Leicester.
Other than 2 of the 3, yeah.
Yeah. So after last season, it is. I thought Ipswich were probably the best set to stay up.
Right.
But I think this is quite a worrying defeat.
But to Tim's point that Southampton can turn this around, Everton are evidence of the fact that you can be really abject for four games and then actually pretty tough opponents in the next 4.
Yeah, but I think it sort of shows the standard of the Premier League these days, doesn't it? When Ipswich come up with, a very good young progressive manager on 96 points, and again some really good summer recruitment. They signed the Championship's top scorer. Delap's obviously come in and started really well, and they still haven't won a game yet. Despite not having the hardest of starts. But yeah, that's what's going to happen when you give a club £100 million in TV money every summer. Then the standard's just going to go up and up and up.
We love it. We love it. Next up, we're actually going to cast our eye beyond the Premier League. So stay tuned for that. We're not tuned, actually. How would I put that in a podcast? Next up, let's take a quick dip into football outside the Premier League and then back in again for more of our top division's top entertainment. That's probably the worst thing I've ever said. Let me go again. Indeed. We love it. All right, next up, we're going to take a quick dip into what's going on up in Scotland. Yes, listener, stick around for that. And then we'll be back with more Premier League after this. Sir Alex Ferguson, after a week in the headlines, was back watching his former side this Saturday. Only the former side was Aberdeen, who, unlike the other mob, have been one of the biggest stories anywhere in Europe this season. Aberdeen, coming into this weekend, had played 13 matches and won every single one of them. The only team anywhere on the continent, or near the continent, to do that. Well, this weekend, they took on Celtic, the team with whom they'd been sharing the lead in the SPFL. How did that game go? And how buzzed is JJ Bull, top Aberdeen fan, about their season? Let's get him on the line now. Oh, look, there he is. Hi, JJ.
Hello.
JJ, what amazing times for Aberdeen. And could they become the first team to end the Celtic Rangers duopoly since Aberdeen in 1985?
It's really fun at the moment, having a really good time, because I've never really been able to enjoy it like this before. But whether we could, I'll stay neutral, whether they could disrupt the duopoly, I'm not sure. There's a chance, I think, that it could possibly be a real push for second. I think it's a long old season, so we'll see what happens over with injuries and things like that. When certain players are missing, I think the team will look a lot different. In particular, Nielsen, one of the new signings midfielder, he's basically like the avatar of the manager on the pitch. But Rangers aren't doing very well at the moment. They're having a bit of a bad time, and the momentum's really there. And I think everyone kind of feels like something is happening.
Okay.
And not to say it will, but we're letting the usual pessimism run loose a bit.
That little flame of optimism must be burning a little bit brighter, though, after what happened this weekend when Aberdeen went to Celtic and went 2-0 down, but roared back to make it 2-2.
Yeah, that game was great. So, the record before we came into it was best record in Europe at the time, something like that. But the expectancy was still that Celtic were probably going to be too much of a challenge. And I think what we saw in the first half was that's what we thought was going to happen was probably what did happen. They're just really good players individually, and they're well coached. Brendan Rodgers knows what he's doing. But then the optimism, like the flame ignited in the second half again. They come out with a little change in tactics. A couple of different players come on, and just an attitude where they really went for them, like man to man across the pitch, really getting in, but like not sitting deep all the time, not pushing forward and being silly, like really doing it in a structured, smart way, really good football, keeping the ball at the right times, looking like a real opponent for Celtic. Because oftentimes what happens when you go to Celtic Park, when you're a team like Aberdeen, is you just get stuck back in. Everyone wants you to have a go, but you get stuck in your own third, and it's one of those classic games, like any Man City game that you watch, where they just have everyone pinned in their own half. But I think there was a lot of going toe-to-toe in that. I think the game at Tawdry, whenever we play Celtic then, will be really interesting, because there is a little bit of optimism off the back of that, yeah.
Nice. Aberdeen last season were relegation strugglers and went through about 1 billion managers, including 32 days with Neil Warnock. Who is the man who's now in charge?
It's a fine gentleman called Yimmy Talene. You spell his name Jimmy, but it's pronounced Yimmy. And so I'm going to do that because that's what his name is. And he was manager of IF Elfsborg in Sweden. He's there for about 6 years, I think, but he took them from not being very good to finishing second twice, like really punching above their weight in terms of finances and the resources they had. Improving players, selling them on at a profit. The perfect small club trying to get big profile of manager. Like every club wants that kind of guy. And I think it was worth waiting for him to arrive, because he just knows what he's doing. The level of coaching is so much better than what we've seen from people in the past. But as ever, I have to be a little bit pessimistic and just like a bit realistic, I suppose, because the moment is working very, very well. But there are underlying numbers that suggest it will balance out eventually. And, if any manager who comes in and does amazingly well, you think, oh, they're a genius. I remember Alan Pardew being revered on Tyneside for a long time. That didn't really last. And so hopefully Tilly is more of the Alex Ferguson type rather than the Alan Pardew. I think that was what every manager wants.
Right. The last manager, of course, to disrupt the duopolies we were mentioning before with Aberdeen back in 1985. Magneto, well, JJ, that's great. 2-2 with Celtic this weekend. They're playing Rangers next weekend when you're actually going to be in the Totally Football Show studio. So we'll get an update from you then on how they're getting on.
That's good. Yeah, I'll be screaming in the studio. That's fine. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Nice to see a bit of life in the studio next weekend. Very good. Oh, speaking of the Totally Football Show studio, on Tuesday it will be a buzz as James Horncastle, Julian Laurence, Paul Balouz and Seb Stafford Bleu join us to round up what's been happening around Europe this weekend and also look ahead to the Champions League and the European fixtures, some pretty big ones. Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, fancy that? Or how about Barcelona, Bayern Munich? Woof. Now, Sir Alex Ferguson was at Parkhead for that game, Celtic Aberdeen, not at Old Trafford. Was that? I presume that was quite a deliberate thing, was it? Or do you think he always would have been?
I mean, it was a big game for Aberdeen.
It was a big game.
But it does feel pointed.
Right. What did he miss by not turning up to Man United Brentford? Daniel?
Well, he missed Eric Ten Hag saving himself, I suppose. Manchester United.
Do you think it was that?
Twice.
Was it that close to? The end?
I think if they'd lost to Brentford, then yes, I think it probably might have been the end, or certainly those wheels would have been put in motion. He also missed Marcus Rashford carrying Manchester United, quite frankly, in a creative context. I know it's Marcus Rashford seems to be this sort of Manchester United bellwether player at the moment because he's an academy graduate, because things have tailed off over the last couple of years. There's such a desperation for Manchester United to be good amongst supporters, but also for him to lead that movement. And that's probably has been too much pressure. But I think over the last few weeks, there are signs that him as a creative force is back and off that left-hand side. He was by far their best player against Brentford. Casemiro was pretty good as well, which is handy given the injuries and absentees in midfield. I don't think they were particularly good. They were wretched in the first half. They were awful. The fact that they've saved themselves, we kind of had this with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It was like, well, this proves the players behind him. This proves they're still fighting Manchester United. And you kind of were left thinking, well, that's lovely, but we'd also like to just be quite a good football team as well. And that element of it hasn't returned yet. We'll see if it will.
Okay. Brentford didn't get their first 90-second goal this time around. And they also didn't get their first win at Old Trafford since 1937, that run, which has got to be one of the longest victory droughts at any ground in English football. That run continues. Well done, Manchester United. Well done, Rasmus Højlund, who got his first Premier League goal of the season. Garnacho, who got the equaliser after Brentford's opener off that superb cross from Marcus Rashford. Well done to Aston Villa, who were a goal down away to Fulham. Raul Jimenez, who continued his resurgence. And then you had a deflected Morgan Rogers strike for Villa. And then you had that Fulham penalty with Andres Pereira, who, if you had to cast, if you went to AI, ChatGPT, and said, could you depict a man about to miss a penalty or see your penalty shot saved in ignominious fashion, it would more or less resemble what Andres Pereira looked like on the run-up there.
Yeah, he didn't look super confident. I mean, in goalkeeper numbers, Bernd Leno got an assist in this game, which
did he?
is exciting because obviously Edison got one earlier in the season for City. We've matched the total of goalkeeper assists from last season already this season.
The long ball game, alive and well in the Premier League.
I do think it does hint, teams are going a bit, because the pressing is so good now that, a clipped ball over the top does actually lead to chances a bit more. So I think we could be in for a bumper season for goalkeeper assists, which pleases me.
Could be in a bumper season for Aston Villa. Not since the last century have Villa claimed this many points from their opening 8 league matches. And they've also done pretty well in Europe as well.
Well, it was also pretty much 2 years to the day since they lost at Fulham, and that was Steven Gerrard's final game. And I think if you said to a lot of Villa fans, fast forward 2 years, you'll be back here, but you'll also have just beaten Bayern Munich in the Champions League, they'd have rubbed their eyes like cartoon style and gone, what?
Right, like Levi Colwill getting a penalty awarded against him.
Very much.
Yeah. Newcastle didn't score at home for the first time since May 2023. This was in Saturday afternoon's clash with Brighton, which saw the Seagulls run out 1-0 winners. Danny Welbeck scoring the goal which sealed it. That's his 5th of the season. You delighted with that, Daniel?
Yeah, let's start the Danny Welbeck back to England train, I think. We should say he's announced on social media as we record that the injury that he went off with that looked really, really nasty is actually not too severe. He said he'll be back in training soon. So, I suspect he will miss next weekend, but it looked like it could be a kind of really serious one. So that's good for him and good for Brighton because he has been one of the best strikers in the Premier League this season. He cannot stop scoring. He has been remarkably efficient. Welbeck always used to have that reputation of like missing 2 before scoring 1, the kind of 1990s Andy Cole rep. But his efficiency this season has been remarkable. He looks like he's loving it. Brighton are getting the best out of him. He's easily keeping Evan Ferguson out the team. Normally, Ferguson did start this game, but Welbeck's just... Yeah, his ability to retain the ball and hold it up and play in others is better than it's ever been.
Yeah. And he's really playing a kind of gnarled veteran role. In the previous game against Spurs, there was a point late on in the game where, I can't remember who it was, but they kind of tried to dribble when they should have been taking it to the corner, and he was properly balling them out. And, it makes us all feel old thinking that Danny Welbeck, and permanently good prospect for so long, is now a grizzled veteran. But he, as Daniel says, he's doing a great job there. And look at Brighton, they're up to 5th now.
Up to 5th.
So,
The Fulham that you wish you picked.
Well, Fulham are still good.
Tables, yeah.
I don't look at the league table till 37 games in.
There you go. We should mention the early game from this round, because that was quite an entertaining affair. Spurs taking on West Ham. This was Saturday lunchtime. And, all sorts of worries for West Ham after the way they collapsed in the second half. All sorts of comfort for Spurs fans who, after what happened to them against Brighton 2 weeks ago, thought they were in for another rough afternoon, going down early on to West Ham and having a very ineffective first half. But it all turned around with a canny substitution.
Yeah, Maddison off and Sarr on, which sort of makes sense. They just look so top heavy. They undoubtedly got the most attacking 11 in the Premier League. When all the defenders are attacking as well. And Sarr, his in terms of his work rate and his ball recoveries, there's not too many better than him in midfield. When he's on his best form, and it just allows Kulusevski that little bit more freedom. And obviously he's really excelling in that sort of 8-10 hybrid role. Spurs are just all or nothing basically. They literally only win or lose at home under Postecoglou. They haven't drawn at home under him yet. And Udogie just kind of epitomises what they're all about, because he was disastrous defensively again on this one, and basically cost them a goal, as he cost them at least 2 against Brighton before the international break. And yet there he is with a superb assist for their second goal for Bissouma, where it looks like for all the world that he's going to cross the ball from the byline, and he just stops and really kind of calmly and cleverly picks out Bissouma. And from then on, West Ham imploded and it was game over. So yeah, Spurs on a good run. They've won 6 or 7 in all comps. Just that crazy 20 minutes at Brighton aside, they look pretty good at the moment.
West Ham, meanwhile, this was billed on theathletic.com as the day West Ham United hit the self-destruct button.
Well, that is only true if it includes them also hitting the self-destruct button in previous games,
and also hitting various Spurs players at the end of the game as well.
That was glorious. Yeah, that was I hate to kind of overanalyze incidents like that, but that did look like the actions of a player who is extremely frustrated with life. I just can't really seem to work them out. They seem to leave an awful lot of space for a team that managed not to create many overlaps in the final third. It's like there must be like this 40-yard area of the pitch where everybody is present, and yet it creates absolutely nothing. So yeah, it just looks a really bad fit at the moment. The defensive organisation is really poor. That might come when Todibo and Kilman play more games together, but central midfield looks a bit of a mess. It doesn't really look like the right shape to press high up the pitch, but also that they aren't defending deep either, so there's space in behind. I can't really work out. Like Kudus and Paqueta and Bowen have really good moments, but they seem to be just sort of happening almost by accident rather than by kind of play design. It's just really hard to work out what they are. And coming off the back of an international break where you think, right, okay, we've had a bad start, but now I'm a new manager and I've got 2 weeks on the training ground, albeit not with lots of my players, but I can come up with some plans for better defensive organisation. It's as bad as they've looked all season. So yeah, not great.
And also, like for West Ham fans, probably the two biggest games of the season are Chelsea and Spurs, and they lost 3-0 at home to Chelsea, and then took the lead at Spurs, which a place where they've got a decent record, and then get smashed. So that's not going to buy Lopetegui, additional time with them for sure.
But it's interesting how at the start of last season it was seen as a divide between Tim Spiers, who'd come in as technical director, and David Moyes. One being very different from the other in terms of continental or homegrown signings. But if you look at the business West Ham have done and the impact their signings have had on the pitch, it's pretty minimal. Even if they're even playing. I mean, Somerville's barely started a game.
Fulcrug's played 60 odd minutes.
Fulcrug's, yeah, he's been injured, but I guess we'll see whether that works out. Carlos Soler's barely played. Luis Gilherme has played 4 minutes. So they spent an awful lot of money on players who aren't playing, and I think Lopetegui obviously deserves time to get it right, because there's a lot of players that have come in and it's a different style of football. But when do you start reaching for David Moyes on the phone?
I'm not sure. Daniel, you going to give us a final word on Spurs?
I can do. I was about to say Carlos Soler is my Duncan Alexander, João Felix on the bench.
Oh yeah.
I had completely forgotten that they signed him, and quite a lot of money as well, and just doesn't seem an obvious fit for him in a team that isn't even working itself. On Spurs, they look. There have been times this season where I've seen them and they have looked better with Maddison not on the pitch. He's obviously excellent, but I just think there's a way that Postecoglou constantly talks about kind of embracing the chaos, and that chaos in attack is the pace they've got out wide. Maddison is really good, but he's a kind of lock picker. He slows the game down deliberately rather than quickening it up. And sometimes they do just look better when they throw at teams with pace, and he's not there to sort of pick a pretty pass. And I think Maddison's great when Spurs have a lead, but when they're chasing games or when they are needing to enforce things, maybe they're better without him at the moment.
It's a weird one because he ended that game early, as we know, but like 45 minutes, he'd created 5 chances, and only Darren Anderson has done that for Spurs in recorded Premier League history in terms of, so the numbers are good, but Spurs visibly improved when he went off. So it's sort of the story of his career a little bit, I think.
Ooh. There you go then. That's the Premier League Matchday 8 stories so far. Forest Palace is still to come on Monday night. We'll be here on Tuesday, but talking about European stuff. And then on Thursday, of course, looking back on some of the results from Europe and forward to Matchday 9. Duncan. I
mean, forgive my, indulgence, but I should just mention
Wickham.
Richard Kone's performance against Peterborough.
Right.
Came on, 2 minutes later scored an equaliser. A few minutes later put Wickham in the lead, and a few minutes after that scored a penalty to make it 3-1. So a substitute perfect hat-trick.
The manager putting out the Kone really worked out.
Very much so, yeah. But a 9-minute hat-trick, perfect hat-trick for a substitute is pretty rare in football.
Wow. Wickham are flying high right now in League One.
Yes.
Yeah,
third place.
Woo. Third place. Woo.
All right,
excellent.
Hat-tricks this weekend for Kane and Kone. So fans of Kune and Kaine and Kine, watch out.
Yeah, other vows are available. When are you doing Wickham on your 92, Daniel?
Interesting. My first piece out this week is on Peterborough, who Wickham beat at the weekend. They have the youngest team in the Football League. I'm playing for time because I've not picked a Wickham game
all right.
yet.
No, that's fine. You got a whole season early doors. Brilliant. Duncan, many, many thanks for joining us from what viewers on YouTube have described as variously the bathroom, a bunker, or just simply jail. But whatever's going on, best of luck with that. Lovely to see you, and hopefully you'll be available for us next time as well. Tim Spiers and Duncan Alexander here in the studio. James Pearce and JJ Bull earlier on the blower, and Liam and producer Charlie in the booth. Most of all, you listener stroke viewer, either on YouTube, your lucky thing, or enjoying our premium podcast product. More available as the week goes on. For now, though, from all of us here, it's thanks for joining us and goodbye.